Welcome back, my friends. My name's Gareth. This is Tech Check. Well, we're on the road to Christmas. We're about 4 weeks away. A lot of you guys out there are going to be on the parts hunt, looking to build used and new PCs. And the market is absolutely rife with parts at the minute. So I thought I'd take the opportunity. I've got about £600 to £700 and I wanted to build the best 1080p gaming machine that I could. So we're going to build in this Corsair 220T. We've got this Ryzen 9 3900X, absolutely fantastic CPU. 32 gigs with the Corsair Vengeance Pro. We've got this RTX 2070 Super. We've got a B450 Tomahawk Max motherboard. And we've got this RM750X power supply. We've got a 970 EVO 1TB M.2. And then we've got this 860 EVO SSD as well. So overall, a couple of RGB fans. Not only is it going to look pretty good, but it should perform really, really well at 1080p. And if we really need to, we can push it up to 1440p as well. With that being said, let's get on and build it. So we'll kick things off, guys, with our Ryzen 9 3900X. Still an absolute fantastic CPU. 12 cores, 24 threads. So we're not going with the 7000 or the 5000. So it is a couple of generations old now. But you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck, especially if you're going to be multitasking using all those threads. So opening up our attention arm, we want to match our triangle on our CPU with the triangle on the socket. Lower that nicely into position and then lower down our attention arm. Once our CPU's in, we can turn our attention to our 970 EVO, again a 1TB. Place it at a 20-degree angle, just like so, push in, and then you'll see that that will sit on our standoff. We'll take the screw and we'll secure that into place. And within the space of 30 seconds, we've got our CPU and our 970 EVO nicely in place. We've got 32 gigs worth of this Corsair Vengeance RAM. It's 3200 megatransfers per second and a cache latency of C16. Because we have got 4 sticks of RAM, we need to populate each DIMM slot. We can do that by just lining it up and then even pressure on each side. Now that we've got this RAM installed, guys, all seated correctly, our next step is some of this MX4 thermal paste. We want a pea-sized shape right in the middle. There we go. Now we've opted for this standard Ryzen CPU cooler. 2 reasons really. Number one, primary reason due to budget. And second reason is that it should be absolutely fine calling this 12-core CPU. And I know a few of you out there will be, well, what's the point in going for a better CPU with 12 cores, 24 threads, if you're going to thermal throttle it and not be able to cool it? This is on the boundaries and on the limits of what this will be able to obviously cool, but we should be absolutely fine. So what we'll do, I like to actually put this round and hook on the actual CPU header straight away, like so. And then one of the best things to do, guys, is make sure AMD is up in the top left-hand corner. We want to ensure that our bracket is fully extended. We're looking to hook this over this eyelid here. Once we've got this one on, we can then get this one on this side over here as well. Now we've got our hooks over the actual socket, we can just pull on the lever until it locks in place. And now you'll see, guys, that that is nice and secure. The next stage, guys, is getting this CPU, motherboard, RAM all installed into the actual 220T. So the first thing we're going to do is take off this glass side panel. One of the reasons why I do like this case is it's quite compact. It's really nice, clean and tidy. Gives you the benefit, if you have got RGB lighting, to actually see inside as well. So whilst this is actually used, we've got an MSI Dragon on the side here. It does come with this full PSU shroud. It comes with all the standoffs included. Some nice generous cutouts for the back of the motherboard tray, as well as obviously all the fans and stuff like that. You get these nice rubber grommets. It does also come with 3 SP120 fans already included in here as well. Just 2 captive thumb screws on the back. And included in this as well comes this 6-port RGB fan hub as well. We've got loads of other fans, obviously, and loads of other cables, but we've got our standard USB 3, which is there. We've got our front I/O, and then we should have our HD audio. Which one is that? That's it. There it is. And then we've just got all our fan connections as well. So plenty of room, loads and loads of space. We've got plenty of room for hard drives and SSDs here. And like we said previously, enough room for our cable management at the back. Let's get our motherboard installed. So this is the point where we want to go ahead and actually install our I/O shield, because this B450 Tomahawk Max doesn't come with an inbuilt one. We don't want to put that in and then have to take it back out and install the I/O shield. So just put it to the back of the case and give it a firm press. Now that's in, we can go ahead and gently lower in our motherboard, line it up with the standoffs. First thing I want to do is take the actual 9 screws that are required, which are these ones here, and we can secure that into place. And literally guys, within the space of 6 or 7 minutes, we've got our tower cooler cooling our CPU, our M.2, our 4 sticks of RAM, our motherboard, nicely secure inside the case. Next thing we're going to do is install the power supply. So here we have this beautiful RM750X. I always say, guys, if you're going to build a decent system, go with a decent power supply. RM750Xs, built with Japanese capacitors, built to last with really good materials. Spend that little bit extra, get that peace of mind. So we'll go ahead and we'll actually connect all of these connections on the back in terms of cables we're going to use. We'll start with our 24 pin. We've got a couple of SATA data cables here. Now, I don't envisage using all of these cables, and due to the fact it is modular, we don't actually have to connect all of these. I really only need 2 SATA connections, but seeing as this is second hand and I don't have any of the boxes, what I want to do is connect all of these cables. So therefore, if the actual new owner wants to extend or expand the storage or anything like that, they've got all the original cables that came with the actual power supply. So we'll move on to our CPU one. And then lastly, but not least, is our PCIe for our graphics card. So next step, guys, we want to make sure that the fan is facing downwards so we can actually let it breathe. We can lower it into place. And then we just need to use the 4 screws and secure it into the case. Next thing we're going to do is actually attach our 1TB SSD. Really straightforward. We want to remove one of these caddies here. I think we'll take this one off here. Now, what we want to ensure is that this is facing downwards so our connections are at the bottom. We don't want it this way around because then we're going to have to stretch the cables all the way around the top. So always ensure that you line it up like that, and then you've got your connections coming straight off the bottom and you can easily connect at the bottom. We can connect our 970 Evo to the back of this particular tray by just lining up the holes and putting 4 screws in. Then to secure it in place, we just push it in the side and lock it down using the thumb screw. We're actually going to connect our SATA power up. So you can see there's a little L shape there. You just want to make sure that you line that up correctly. We can line it up and then push it on. And then that's our SATA power for our particular SSD here. What we do also need to do is we need to connect a SATA data cable as well. So again, just line that up and then push it on. We'll route our power cables from our power supply, and we can do that. We've got our CPU one here, which we know goes through that grommet at the top up here. We've got our 24 pin, which will go through the middle one. We need to provide power to our actual RGB hub, and we can use another SATA power cable. And then that can be also pushed into the bottom of the actual case. I like to leave the actual PCIe one just dangling out because I don't know whether I want to come from the bottom, the middle, or potentially even underneath as well. We'll then go ahead from our RGB hub, our USB 2 connection, we'll push underneath and into the front of the case also. That needs to be connected to a USB 2 header on our motherboard. I think the best option here is to then move on to our front I/O. We'll push those through to the relevant places. We've just got our front I/O, power, reset switch and stuff like that. We've got our HD audio cable, and then we've got our USB-C cable. So I'll push them through to the front, and then what we'll do is we'll install the top and rear fan, and then I'll go ahead and show you how to connect that up to the RGB hub and where we connect it, all these cables onto our motherboard. So due to the fact that I've got plenty of room in this particular case, what I'm actually going to do is go ahead and actually install and connect the cables before I put in the top fan and the rear fan now. So the first one I like to get away with is the 24 pin. We just need to bend that round and we just need to clip it into place. We can push the excess through to the back and we can zip tie them all down and tidy them up once we're done. The next one I like to do is this 8-pin CPU one here. Now, as you can see, these have split, so you just need to make sure that they go back together nicely. Make sure the connector is at the top and then turn it round and just connect it in. This one you've got to be quite careful with. It's got a little notch at the top. We just need to bend it round and connect that one in. Next one is our SATA data cable for our 1TB Samsung 860. We can then move on to our HD audio. A little trick with this one, guys, is if you've got the audio facing upwards, you can just turn it around like that, and it's this bottom left-hand connection down here. And the last but not least is our power switch, our reset switch, and our power LED positive and negative. Now, I'd always advise, grab out your motherboard manual. If not, look up on the internet for your particular model of motherboard and just get the JFP1 layout. You can't go wrong. Just make sure that you are connecting the positive and the negative on each one of the switches the correct way round, indicated by the little triangle on the back of the actual clip here. So as you can see here, guys, we've not used one zip tie at all. Yes, it's a little bit messy down here, and we don't want to obviously have the cables past the end of the actual tray, so we do need to make sure that they're all bunched up this side, because we don't want to look down there and see all the cables, etc. But what we can do is route that CPU cable down there. We can push the USB and the SATA power cable for the RGB hub just in this straight line down here, and we can zip tie it down. We've got our USB and our front IO all in this little bit here, and we can zip tie those nicely down. We've got plenty of clearance here because it's a little bit wider down here. That's where all these zip tie points are. And again, down here, if you don't want it actually hanging loose or anything, feel free to use some of these zip tie points, but I don't think there's going to be any need for that because it's a solid back panel. So we'll get these front two fans in, and then we'll start connecting up to our RGB hub and figure out if we've got enough headers on our motherboard to connect our fans to. So the first fan that I'm going to actually install is as an exhaust. The top's going to be as an exhaust as well. So we want the cables coming off of this particular side here. So we can put that inside, and then we're just going to secure it down with 4 of the screws from outside the case, holding the case fan in place. And then we'll do exactly the same thing as an exhaust, but at the top, securing it in place. So the next part is probably the most important part, hooking up our RGB so that in IQ, all our fans will work exactly how we envisage them. So I want my bottom fan at the front to be fan number 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that fan connection there. This is our RGB connection, and I'm going to put it into fan port number 1. So port 1 is over here, so we'll put it into that connection just there. We'll take our next one up, which is fan number 2, and try and keep your cables as tidy as possible. I'm just showing you this for demonstration purposes. I'll go back and I'll tidy them all up afterwards. We want then fan number 3, which is the front fan at the top, which goes into there. We then want fan number 4. And then we want our last RGB fan, which is fan number 5. And we can connect that straight into there. So the reason why we have to do it with RGB, guys, is if you've got a scatter effect or some sort of RGB effect, they won't actually light up, and the effects won't work sometimes if you don't have them in actual order. So if I put fan number 1 in fan port 6, and then if I put fan number 2 in fan port number 3, something's not going to work properly, and you'll have the back of the case off and doing it all over again. So just make sure your RGB is in order. When it comes down to your 3-pin connections or your 4-pin PWM connections, they can go onto any 3-pin or 4-pin header, fan header on your motherboard. If your motherboard doesn't have enough headers, then you'll need to get a splitter cable, and you can get them 2 or 3 or even 4-way splitter cables. Just check how many headers you have on your particular motherboard. So I've just connected the last system fan, and that was system fan number 1. So we've got 1 on there, we've got 2 here, then we've got 3, 4, 5. So good news is we don't need to use any splitters. But if we did, and you can't get that cable through that particular heatsink there, and you don't want it unsightly, you could have just used a splitter and connected it to any one of these actual fan system 1 headers, and you would have been absolutely fine. Time to pull through the excess, move on to the graphics card. So moving on to the most exciting part, and generally the most expensive piece of hardware that goes in a PC build as well. So this is the Gigabyte RTX 2070 Super. Really fantastic card, 8GB of VRAM, and particularly good at high refresh at 1080p. Can push that 1440p frame rate as well. So let's open up our PCIe slot by making sure our catch is actually open. We offer up and line up the PCIe slot like so. We make sure we've removed our 2 brackets, so that's slots 2 and 3. Once we've got it in place, we give it a firm push until we hear that confirmation click. We can go ahead and tighten this down to make sure that we get rid of any unwanted sag, and we can go ahead and connect our 8-pin and our 6-pin. We've just given the dust filter a nice clean, guys, because I did notice there was a little bit of dust on that as well. We can put our front panel back on. What we can do now, guys, is go ahead and place our glass side panel, give that a bit of a clean as well. But I would say overall, I'm really impressed. This is going to be, I would say, about 12-18 months ago, a 1,000, probably £200 PC, something like that. Yes, it's not utilising the latest hardware, but with the new Ryzen chips and the new Intel chips coming out, and obviously this hardware dropping back another generation, it's made it really affordable. So it's going to be more than capable at playing at 1080p, high refresh, and even 1440p as well. So RTX 2070 Super, 32 gigs worth of RGB RAM in here as well. On this B450 Tomahawk Max motherboard, a 12-core Ryzen 9 3900X with 2 terabytes worth of really fast storage. One being an 860 EVO SSD and one being a Gen 3 M.2 970 EVO. We've got that added aesthetic with these 5 Corsair SP120 fans in this lovely 220T from Corsair as well. Not to mention RM750X power supply, so you've got that reliability. So we've reached that part which every PC builder dreads if they've not done it properly. Let's flick the actual power switch. Well, we've got no lights, but let's press the power button. That's what I like to see. Now, we haven't or shouldn't have an operating system. I don't know whether one of the M.2s has got one on from the previous owner. But regardless, it'd be nice to see it go through to Windows or the BIOS. Either one, I'm not too fussed. But it's nice to see all the front RGB, the top and the back fans all working. We can obviously see our CPU cooler nice and working, and our RGB is nicely hooked up as well. Oh, we have got a connection, and we can see here device has changed CPU or memory. Press F1 to run setup. We'll press F1 and there we go, guys, straight into the BIOS. So the next steps here are to ensure that we've got Windows. I want to do a fresh install. I want to make sure that everything's cleaned nicely. It's going to a new owner, so we want to make sure that no old drivers on there, on a full clean setup really. I'm going to get on with that. I'm also going to download some IQ software, all the latest drivers, and then I'll be back with you guys maybe, well, for you, it will be in a few seconds. For me, it'll probably be tomorrow. I've got to download some of the latest games onto this M.2, and let's see if we can actually test it out, give you an indication of how it performs. So here we are, guys, a couple of days later, fresh trim, joined by a little Czech here, who's going to show us some Fortnite and some Rocket League.
Yep.
Yeah, and then we'll have a look at some Call of Duty and some Apex, give you roundabout figures around the CPU and the GPU temps and the usage as well. Then we'll finish off with a few glamour shots and show you what this £600 to £700 PC can actually do. Ready to get some kills?
Yep.
Don't let me down.
I won't.
Come on then.
Hopefully not.
So we're getting 165 to 180, 200 and so on. GPUs at 55, 56 degrees and CPUs at around 58, 59.
Oh, no, he isn't.
No, it's there. Uh-oh.
That wasn't meant to happen.
That wasn't meant to happen, was it? Never mind. But we've got an average about 200 FPS, yeah?
Yeah.
So next game up, guys, is Rocket League. We're playing 1080p, full screen, and we're playing at high quality settings here as well. So, you ready for this one?
Yeah.
Let's do it. What we got, 60 degrees GPU, 58 on the CPU, absolutely fantastic. As you can see there, look guys, 13% utilization on the CPU, so those 12 cores not being utilized. And we're at 88% on the GPU, so we have got a little bit of headroom there if we wanted to play it potentially 1440p as well. So overall, somewhere around 400 to 500 FPS, mostly around 450, so really, really good. So jumping into some Warzone, guys, we are utilising DLSS here. Low to medium settings, most stuff is turned off, as you would expect, to be honest. So jumping into the game, we can see that the GPUs are around 57, 58, and the CPUs had a bit of a spike at 62. And we are utilising more of the actual CPU itself. So just shows that Modern Warfare 2, you do require a bit more of a powerful CPU as well. But we're generally getting somewhere between 120 and 140 FPS, something like that. So in Apex Legends, guys, we're playing at 1080p, competitive settings, and we're getting a locked 144. So this 2070 Super, absolutely fantastic. Again, GPUs around 55 degrees, CPUs at 56 degrees, just proving at 1080p. Something like this system, £600 to £700, could be an absolute bonus here.
Uh-oh.
Yes!
No. Why did you do that?